Yeah, turn off the volume then. Yeah, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And Shashi Shekhar Prabhu is going to be giving class today. We welcome Shashi Shekhar Prabhu. Thank you, everybody. And it's all yours, Prabhu. I'm going to bring the microphone.
So we'll start with Jaya Radha Madhava by the devotee Mahaprema Vesh will be chanting it. You have a drum? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha
Punjabi.
Girivardhari Avalaba Girivardhari Gopi Jalava Girivardhari Vejanava Girivardhari Yashodana Dana Vrajajanana Yashodana Vrajajana Yashodana Dana Vrajajana Yashodana Dana Vrajajana Atira Atira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Charya Shtota Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Charya Shtota Shata Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gauda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Go Premanande, Hari Hari Bol, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, Hari Hari Bol. something. 2, 3, 11. Hare Krishna devotees. Just start with the pranam mantras. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vikasha Swami Ti Namaste Saraswati Deva Gaudavani Pachalini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning. Hare Krishna. We are studying, reading, and exploring the verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, Verse 11. So we'll start by reading the Sanskrit call and response, then we'll go through the verse and the purport. So we'll start. I'll chant, you respond. Etavan eva yanta yajatam eva yajatam iha nishreyashodhayaha shodhaya bhagavati achalo bhavo yad bhagavata sangata etavan eva yajatam iha nishreyashodhayaha bhagavati achalo bhavo yad bhagavata sangata etavan eva yajatam iha nishreyashodhayaha bhagavati achalo bhavo yad bhagavata sangata. Anyone in the temple, please?
Etavam eva yajatam
Etatam etayajatam
anishreyasodaya
iha nishreyashodhaya
bhagavatyachalabaho
bhagavati achalo bhavo
yad bhagavata sangataha
yad bhagavata sangata etavan eva yajatam. Sangata
etavam eva yajatam
etavan eva yajatam iha nishreyashodhaya bhagavati achalo bhavo bhagavata sangata etavan eva yajatam Om Yadbhavatya Sangata. Anyone online would like to say it? Chant the verse?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
No?
Yes, yes. Etavan eva
Okay.
yajata.
Word for word.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Synonyms.
Krishna.
Etavan.
Oh God, he's doing.
I don't
All
think he's
these
able to
different kinds
hear.
of worshipers. Eva.
Eva.
Certainly.
Certainly.
Yajatam. While worshiping. Iha. In this life. Nishreyasa. The highest benediction. Udaya. Development. Bhagavati. Unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Achala.
Achala.
Unflinching.
Unflinching.
Bhava. Spontaneous attraction.
Spontaneous attraction.
Jat. Which. Bhagavata.
Bhagavata.
The pure devotee of the Lord. Sangata. Association. Translation. All the different kinds of worshipers of multi-demigods can attain the highest perfectional benediction, which is spontaneous attraction, unflinchingly fixed upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only by the association of the pure devotee of the Lord. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. All living entities in different statuses of life within the material creation, beginning from the first demigod Brahma down to the small ant, are conditioned under the laws of material nature, or the external energy of the Supreme Lord. The living entity in his pure state of consciousness the living entity in his pure state is conscious of the fact that he is a part and parcel of the Lord. But when he is thrown into the material world on account of his desire to lord it over material energy, he becomes conditioned by the three modes of material nature, and thus struggles for the existence for the highest benefit. This struggle for existence is something like following the will-o'-the-wisp under the spell of material enjoyment. All plans for material enjoyment, either by worship of different demigods as described in the previous verse of this chapter, or by modernized advancement of scientific knowledge without the help of God or demigod, are illusory only. For despite all such plans for happiness, the conditioned living being within the compass of material creation can never solve the problems of life, namely birth, death, old age, and disease. The history of the universe is full of such plan makers, and many kings and emperors come and go, leaving a plan-making story only. But the prime problems of life remain unsolved, despite all endeavors by such plan makers. Actually, human life is meant for making a solution to the problems of life. One can never solve such problems by satisfying the different demigods, by different modes of worship, or by so-called scientific advancement in knowledge, without the help of God or the demigods. Apart from the gross materialists who care very little either for God or for the demigods, The Vedas recommend worship of different demigods for different benefits. And so the demigods are neither false nor imaginary. The demigods are as factual as we are, but they are much more powerful due to their being engaged in the direct service of the Lord in managing different departments of the universal government. The Bhagavad Gita affirms this, and the different planets of the demigods are mentioned there, including the one of the supreme demigod, Lord Brahma. The gross materialists do not believe in the existence of God or the demigods, nor do they believe that different planets are dominated by different demigods. They are creating a great commotion about reaching the closest celestial body, Chandraloka, or the moon. But even after much mechanical research, they have only very scanty information of this moon. And in spite of much false advertisement for selling land on the moon, the puffed up scientists or gross materialists cannot live there. And what to speak of reaching the other planets, which they are unable even to count. However, the followers of the Vedas have a different method of acquiring knowledge. They accept the statements of the Vedic literature as authority in toto, as we have already discussed in Canto 1, and therefore they have full and reasonable knowledge of God and demigods, and of their different residential planets situated within the compass of the material world and beyond the limits of the material sky. The most authentic Vedic literature accepted by the great Indian acharya like Shankara, Ramanuja, Madhva, Vishnu Swami, Nimbarka, and Chaitanya, and studied by all important personalities of the world, is the Bhagavad Gita, in which the worship of demigods and their respective residential planets are mentioned. The Bhagavad Gita 9:25 affirms, Yanti Deva Vrata Devan Pitrin Yanti Pitir Vrataha Bhutani Yanti Bhuteja Yanti Mad Yajnanino Pi Mam. The worshippers of demigods reach the respective planets of the demigods, and the worshippers of forefathers reach the planets of the forefathers. The gross materialists remain in the different material planets, but the devotees of the Lord reach the kingdom of God. We also have information from the Bhagavad Gita that all the planets within the material world, including Brahmaloka, are but temporarily situated, and after a fixed period, they are all annihilated. Therefore, the demigods and their followers are all annihilated at the period of devastation. But one who reaches the kingdom of God gets a permanent share in eternal life. That is the verdict of Vedic literature. The worshippers of the demigods have one facility more than the unbelievers due to their being convinced of the Vedic version, by which they can get information of the benefit of worshiping the Supreme Lord in the association of the devotees of the Lord. The gross materialists, however, without any faith in the Vedic version, remains eternally in darkness, driven by a false conviction on the basis of imperfect experimental knowledge, or so-called material science, which can never reach into the realm of transcendental knowledge. Therefore, unless the gross materialists or the worshippers of the temporary demigods come in contact with a transcendentalist like the pure devotee of the Lord, their attempts are simply a waste of time, waste of energy, Only by the grace of the divine personalities, the pure devotees of the Lord, can one achieve pure devotion. which is the highest perfection of human life. Only a pure devotee of the Lord can show one the right way of progressive life. Otherwise, both the materialistic way of life, without any information of God or the demigods, and the life engaged in the worship of demigods in pursuit of temporary material enjoyments, are different phases of phantasmagoria. They are nicely explained in the Bhagavad Gita also, but the Bhagavad Gita can be understood in the association of pure devotees only, and not by the interpretations of politicians or dry philosophical speculators. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshulun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Sva Pandantikam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, before beginning, I would like to ask blessings and permission from all the senior Vaishnavas so that I may speak something in line with the Guru Parampara. Just reading the verse one more time. All the different kinds of worshipers of multi-demigods can attain the highest perfectional benediction, which is spontaneous attraction, unflinchingly fixed upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by the association of the pure devotee of the Lord. So we have a very instructive verse, two sides in the verse. The highest benediction and how to attain it. So without looking, can anyone say what is the highest benediction? Anyone remember? Yes. So the highest benediction is spontaneous attraction, unflinchingly fixed upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Supreme Personality of Godhead being Krishna. The word here that's used to describe this is bhava, bhav, love. This spontaneous attraction. So this is the highest benediction. What is a benediction? It's something of good fortune. The highest thing that we can attain in this material or spiritual world is to have this spontaneous attraction. Now, then we have the other side, which is how to attain it. How do we attain it? How do we attain it? Yes, association with the pure devotee of the Lord. And then so it seems quite simple. So we understand what the highest benediction is, and then we understand how to attain it, right? And we see throughout many different points in the Srimad Bhagavatam and in the Bhagavad Gita that this description is given, that association with a devotee is the basis for how we can attain perfection in our life. Now, we find ourselves, as Srila Prabhupada makes many points in this purport, in a somewhat precarious situation in this particular age that we're living in. So we are living in what is described as the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. And Prabhupada makes a reference to the difference, in this verse makes reference to the differences of worship. And for the most part, we are in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, also known as Kali Yuga. There is a misdirected aim of life, a misdirected approach at how to acquire knowledge and what the ultimate purpose of life is. And that is due to one main factor, which is that human beings and overall the living entities are covered by illusion. They are in ignorance of the true purpose of human life. So we're in this atmosphere of ignorance. And especially for those of us who were born and raised in this Western culture, there's a aim of life that is directed towards how we can gain material enjoyment. And as Prabhupada makes mention of in this verse, there are so many plans on how we can do that. And that all across, not just this planet, but all throughout the whole universe, which in this material universe, as another point that Prabhupada makes, in this material universe, all these planetary systems, everything that is here is temporary. Yet the plan makers are making plans for what? To control this material energy, to enjoy this material energy. Although with a little bit of insight or a little bit of knowledge, one can see very clearly and plainly that the efforts and attempts to try to enjoy and control this material energy ultimately are a pathway to frustration and sadness and loss. Why is that? Because no matter what we control, no matter what we gain in this material energy, at some point it must be given up. Even if by some chance we are able to control the material energy and get ourselves into a position of happiness and enjoyment, we cannot stay here. We have to give it up. And the unfortunate position that we find ourselves in, on one side, is that until we come in touch with knowledge and association, as described in this verse, with the pure devotee of the Lord, and understand that there is an alternative. We are stuck in the one mode of life. Because of ignorance, we follow leaders. We follow those blind leaders that direct us and ultimately exploit us into a wrong goal of life. And this very valuable human form of life becomes wasted in an effort to try to grasp something that Prabhupada describes as a will of the wisp. Does anyone have any experience of what that's like? A kind of old term, but there's this, the idea of like a will of the wisp. Can anyone explain what that is? Do you know? Yeah, I think it has something to do. I don't know if it's like sailors or something, like there's like a light in like a swamp, or like it's something that like appears and then like disappears. So you think it's there, you see something, but then it's not really there. So you grasp at it. Same thing with like a mirage in the desert, which I think we all have probably more, understanding of. Mirage in the desert. You're in the desert, you're seeing something further off in the desert. And you see, like, because you're seeking after it, you see this water and this city. Oh, I'm going towards it. You keep moving towards it, but you get there and you realize that it's nothing but an illusion. But then you're too far out in the desert. You're so far out, you can't get back, so you're stuck. So this is the kind of situation that we find ourselves in. if we end up in a position of following these plan makers, as Prabhupada puts it. This is going on all over the universe, not just here, but I mean, we can experience it in our own life here. In this exact chapter, just a few verses ahead from where we are right now, it's described that actually these plan makers are described to be like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. And that those men who are like that praise other men who are like that. And they never listen to the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So what makes us like this, these dogs, hogs, camels, and asses? Like, this is how it's described in the Bhagavatam. I mean, the Bhagavatam is openly declaring it, that however great a leader may be, that these men, these plan makers, are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses, and that they have no taste for being enlightened by the Supreme Personality of Godhead or by Krishna, and that ultimately these men are nothing more than animals in the guise of men. So we have a great opportunity here to come in contact with a true devotee of the Lord in Srila Prabhupada. And essentially everything in Srila Prabhupada's movement that we come in touch with, we can gain further spiritual advancement, whether it be the books, the kirtan, the teachings, the lectures, the paintings, the temples. Srila Prabhupada was so expert in developing a system of educating people about the ultimate benediction of life. And he engaged the lowest members of society, coming from the understanding of the Vedic way of life. The lowest members of society are what? They're described as dog eaters. Or another way of putting it is malechas and yavanas, those who are not followers of the Vedas, those who are meat eaters. He came to the West, he came over here, and he engaged us in how to understand this Vedic knowledge and how to understand what that ultimate purpose of life is, through every possible channel that one could imagine, through art, plays, music, books, temples. And Srila Prabhupada was the ultimate plan maker, actually. You know, his plan from the very beginning. Who could have possibly imagined that an old man coming into, Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhu. An old man coming from India on a steamship with, 40 rupees in his pocket could penetrate into the most, sinful mode of ignorance society that maybe the world has ever seen. There's this phrase that's, I don't know who originally said it, but it's like within ISKCON, it's in like a needle, out like a plow. So Srila Prabhupada came in like he came in like nobody was paying any attention. But by the time he came out, he had like ripped a hole in the framework of the materialistic plan maker's approach to give guidance to those all around the whole world. And Srila Prabhupada's vision was that actually, if we can get those people in America to take to this Krishna consciousness, then the rest of the world will follow. Because he had already, made attempts within India to start societies, and he wasn't gaining the type of traction that he wanted there. But of course, he had his guide, his direction from his spiritual master to print books and to go to the West if he ever could. So, but even in his transcendental vision, he recognized that if he came to America, because the rest of the world was looking to America kind of as this pillar of like material success, that if the Americans would do it, then the rest of the world would follow. And that is exactly what happened. And when Srila Prabhupada came, he was thinking that he would engage with the higher echelons, even of American society. He would talk to the philosophers and the academics. But ultimately, what he ended up with was the hippies and those people on the fringes of society. And he changed, and he took those people on the fringes of society, and he transformed them into pure devotees of the Lord. And since Srila Prabhupada's appearance, he was able to then, those devotees who came in touch with Srila Prabhupada were then able to take that knowledge and spread it around the whole world. Now we have Srila Prabhupada's movement in practically every nook and cranny of the whole world, where we are able to come in touch with this Bhagavatam, which is the incarnation, the literary incarnation of Krishna. And we're all here listening to this class, coming in touch with Srila Prabhupada through his purports and through the messages that he gave us to pull us out of this world. Actually, in the next verse, it's described as the whirlpool of the modes of nature. And I think, for those of us who haven't been in Krishna consciousness our whole life, I think we can all get the experience of what it's like being in the whirlpool of the modes of material nature. And it really is like that, because we're before we have a compass, which is also mentioned a few times in this purport. There's like this idea of a compass. Until we have some direction in terms of what we should do with our life, then we spend our life trying to like shift the burden of material existence from one place to the other. And we can see that the whole world is so full of attempts to try to shift the burden and shift and find an answer to the problems of material life. But as it's described in this purport, I mean, there's like so much just in this purport that human life is meant for making a solution to the problems of life. But one can never solve such problems by satisfying different demigods, which I know from my perspective, I've never I've never really tried to satisfy demigods. That's not really something that I consider as like the pathway out. But then we have what we do in this, so-called scientific advancement is that we think materialistic advancement is going to be the solution to our problem. It's almost like that becomes our God, that becomes our religion. But we see here that can never solve the problems of life. And so, interestingly enough, here in the purport, also Prabhupada makes the mention that that those who at least are coming in touch with the demigods are one step above those who are just grossly in the eternal darkness of trying to advance materially. So we have this opportunity to rise above. And by adhering, coming in touch with, and staying connected to a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, and those things that are emanating from the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada, all the different aspects of devotional service that he gave us, we can fulfill the purpose of human life, and we can gain happiness and direction and guidance in our life right now, and create an atmosphere for ourselves of sanity and happiness and direction, so that we don't end up being misled and misguided by those who can juggle words nicely and fool us and convince us that they will provide us some level of stability or happiness because they have some claim over material resources that we're also looking for, and they're going to pull us and direct us and guide us into the lower, ultimately back down into the lower species of life. So we have this opportunity. Actually, from there's a few verses here, actually, so many verses throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam that describe the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhagavad Gita, that describe the importance of the association with the pure devotee. So ultimately, this is authorized, bona fide. The Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a verse there that says, Krishna Nitya Das, that we are the eternal servant of Krishna. Krishna Nitya Das, eternal servant. But Jiva Taha Bhuli Gela, E Doshe Maya Tare Galia Bandita. The living entity is bound around the neck by the chain of Maya, because he has forgotten that he is eternally a servant of Krishna. And then what comes right after that is this: the verdict of all the revealed scriptures is that even by a moment's association with the pure devotee, one can attain all success. So that's our opportunity to come in touch with a pure devotee, to make the connection with Srila Prabhupada and his devotees, to follow the process that Srila Prabhupada gave us in whatever form that we can adhere to and that inspires us. There's so many different opportunities and ways to do that, through Harinam Sankirtan, through the books, if we're philosophically minded, through prasadam, through art, look at the paintings, the music, it's all there. So if we can find a way to keep ourselves inspired and connected and bring ourselves closer to to this message and continue to move towards the great benediction of attaining this spontaneous, this bhav, this spontaneous love of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we can actually fulfill the purpose of our life and also help others do that as well. Because actually this movement, Prabhupada said, this movement is a revolutionary movement. This is not a sectarian religious movement in the same way that we are just going to create a little group that fits in with society so that we can kind of get along with everybody else and then just kind of fit in. Actually, like Srila Prabhupada did, like, if we're fitting in, it's just to be able to ultimately break out of this, to show others how to break out of this materialistic civilization. Because the aim of life, the basis, the axiom for materialistic life is based on a false premise. That premise is that this life is for enjoying these bodies, and that the pursuit of happiness is the ultimate goal. So we're saying, no, actually, that's not, like, the whole basis for the civilization is off. So we come in and we actually give the real guidance. And it's for everyone, because Krishna Nitya Das, the Jiver Sarup Hoy, the Jiva, who we are, like the eternal nature of all living entities, is to be a servant of Krishna, of God, of the supreme personality of Godhead. So it's not like that's just some people are Hindus, or some people are Christians, or some people are Muslims, and they have the only pathway to understanding God. So we have, as Prabhupada mentioned, this is an educational movement. Because that's the main piece that's really missing for people, is that they don't know, they don't have an alternative. So we are here to give them an alternative. That's what Srila Prabhupada came. That's what he wrote the books for, the purports, is education. So the goal of this movement is to educate the masses on how they can attain the highest perfection, the highest benediction of life, and then go out and give that to other people, which is the highest form of social welfare work. Because as we understand, which has been described so many times, if we're going to try to save someone, a drowning man, and you just pull the man's clothes out of the water, but the man himself is still in the water, or woman is still in the water, then did you really save them? So basics of the Bhagavad Gita: we are not this body. We are the eternal spirit soul. And the lack of knowledge in relation to that is the cause of the suffering that we have. So if we are attempting to save people by fixing their material circumstances, which is what pretty much any philanthropic or, materially motivated attempt is, to give people some help on the material level. We are here to give people help on the spiritual level, to save them, to help the drowning person, not the dress on the drowning person. So that's the opportunity that we have. And we're all here listening to the Srimad Bhagavatam this morning. So thank you very much for coming. And if anyone has any questions or thoughts or ideas in relation to this verse, there's so much here to get into. I mean, I just basically touched on a few small points, but it could go on and on and on. Does anyone have any thoughts or any ideas or realizations or anything in relation to this verse that they'd like to say? We'll start with those in the temple. Thank you. Jai. Thank you. Thank you. Anything from you? No. Okay. Anything else? Anyone? No? Anyone from internet land? Let me pull up the... Any thoughts, realizations?
Thank you very much,
Okay.
Prabhu. I don't see any
So
hands
we
up.
have, we'll just quickly just touch back on the verse so that we can meditate on this today. All the different kinds of worshipers of multi-demigods can attain the highest perfectional benediction, which is spontaneous attraction, unflinchingly fixed upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by the association of the pure devotee of the Lord. So we have the two sides. What is the highest perfectional benediction? Spontaneous attraction to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How do we attain it? By the association of the pure devotee of the Lord. What does it mean to have pure devotion, to have association of the pure devotee of the Lord? To come in right now in this age, in this particular time in history, we can adhere right to Srila Prabhupada's message, and anything that came from him, then we can get that association, and we can we can come out of the darkness and into the light and gain happiness and peace and true freedom in our life. And we don't have to wait. You can do it right now. Do it today. Hare Krishna. So that's it, unless anyone has anything else. Jai. Vanchakopa Trupyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.